I'm Ryan.
And I'm Zach.
And this is After the Midnight,
a podcast dedicated to the band The Midnight.
Each week we take a deep dive into their tracks in chronological order.
This week we're discussing track 1 off their EP Days of Thunder. The Years.
Did we start with lyrics, or did we start... You had a track, right, Tim?
Yeah, I think the chord progression and the little sort of like it's almost like a Japanese,
or like the bagpipey kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I had like a rough idea, and then basically I played for Tyler, and you basically took it and run with it.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird song. That's why we call it the Prologue. There's no real chorus. It's just kind of an AAA format. But yeah, I mean, really, it's a song about my wife. We moved in together in Santa Monica in, I guess, 2012, and a lot of the lyrical content is just sort of about us meeting, and yeah.
And some of the interviews that we listened to preparing for this, they didn't really have any kind of linear songwriting or, like a chronological order early on in the band. To hear that and hear that it came from, production, first, and that it's just so building. Like as we get into it and listen to it, like the whole track just builds and builds and builds. So I think it's really metaphorical for the beginning of the Midnight, like Prologue, The Years, the first song on the first release. It's just like,
yeah, very
much this is who we are.
Yeah, that's an awesome song. I think it was probably the third or fourth song that I heard by them. So I kind of started with Jason, and then I went back in their catalog, and I guess this was the start of the album, so I had checked this out, and it's definitely, it's a different structure. There is no chorus or anything like they were saying.
Yeah, just that build up into the drums. And I love in that clip that you just played, they talk about like the Japanese influence in the production. You can hear that, I think Tyler said it was bagpipes, but like this really funky sample that's not even really common for what you'd hear of the Midnight, but it's just such a cool melodic, sample-y thing. And it's just cool that it has a Japanese influence to it too, and it's just really, really different for them, but still classic Midnight.
Yeah, definitely. Is that like the part at the very beginning, or it's just kind of like a full sound?
I'll point it out like as soon as it comes in. It's really prominent in the very beginning. And once I heard them say the Japanese influence thing, I was like, oh man, that sounds really like Japanese, or like an Asian, like a ancient Asian type of sound. And it's cool because like what I think has become Tim's signature, or one of his signatures, is like it's pitch bent all over the place. So he finds a sound and like makes it into, it's such an obscure sound, but he makes it into this cool melody that's really mystical, and it's cool just with all the other sounds that you hear there in the beginning, because I mean he's hitting you with just every 80s sounding synth all at once, kind of like building together, but to have that in the very middle of it is really neat.
Yeah, awesome. Let's take a listen. Like that's the part I'm curious about. Like, is that just a bunch of layered synths? Because it just sounds so full.
Yeah. So that first intro sound you hear there is a sample or like a pad that he's just hitting, and then very quickly you hear that second sound that comes in is like a just very vintage sounding 80s. Reminds me of like a beginning of any 80s movie, honestly.
That's good. Good point.
That's the sound I'm talking about.
Yeah, what's really cool about that is like drums actually aren't in the song for pretty much till the last portion. So like that really keeps the tempo and the beat going, is that main driving synth there.
Yeah, totally. It just comes in so prominent. Like already up into that point right there, I think we heard like 3 or 4 different synths just kind of like unfold and start to build, and then they hit you with that really, really bold melody. So yeah, it gives me chills.
What I love about his lyrics, they're just so visual. So many other songs, like I can just sit there and just visualize. And I mean, I think that's kind of with synthwave as well. But, like that whole thing, you can see her in the front seat.
Totally. One of the interviews in prep for this, I think Tim actually talks about like when him and Tyler met, that's one of the things that really drew Tim to want to work with Tyler, is how visual Tyler is with his lyrics, and he just painted a whole picture, like a whole setting, and just put you right there, and it's so catchy, and the rhyme schemes with it, man, it's gorgeous.
That whole synth breakdown there is awesome.
The pulsing bass, the really catchy bass riff going there. It's cool to hear. I feel like you hear this so much with the Midnight, but with them being a 2-piece, like the respect between the 2 guys.
Yeah, that's what makes them great, I think, because they both know what they're good at, and they both let each other and trust each other to do what they're good at. And yeah, it's cool, like, because this is Tim's production baby, and so like the remixes that they do, it's just kind of Tim's involved and Tyler's not involved, but that allows him to kind of expand and experiment with some other people's stuff and expand their sound.
One thing I think that's cool about this song is they get you in this whole groove, this whole vibe. You think it's gonna go one way, and then everything just stops, and then there's just that synth breakdown right there.
Like, I want to know if, he had this portion, and maybe this was like the main portion they had of the song, and then he decided to hold it back, toward the end, and let the door happen, or how the production came about.
I know, I wonder that too. They've talked about in their songwriting process, that Tim will just send some chords Tyler's way or progressions his way or something like that, and that very much feels like start of the song chords.
Mm-hmm. So good.
No matter how many times you hear those drums come in right there, it just touches the soul. It's so good.
I also how far back his vocals feel. I feel like they're in a distance yelling this.
I love group vocals like that, like just shouting vocals, big, lots of reverb. I'm such a huge fan of that. I think it's so catchy in music, no matter how it's used. And I often wonder, if Tim's in there with them.
I wonder that on a lot of their songs. He's hidden in there, we just don't know it.
Yeah, I would.
So good. So I got some clips. So yeah, I thought this was interesting. So Tim was talking about kind of what the lyrics and stuff mean, and I'll let him talk about it.
The whole vibe is still very nostalgic and thinking about lost love and kind of a moment in time. It's all about the cracks in the time. It's not to let anything go. We seem to only try to remember the big events in our lives, but it's all those tiny moments that we kind of forget. That's really what makes us feel something when we kind of think back on that, if that makes any sense. That's what this song is all about, for me anyway.
Man, that's so poetic, honestly. It just, to hear that from Tim, like, I mean, obviously Tyler wrote the lyrics, but to hear that, man, he summed it up just so beautifully. And it's so cool to think about, like, the Midnight is, they're kind of a, you know, they took this crack in time of the 80s and just took that whole aesthetic and that whole vibe and have really carved out their own kind of crack in time and made their own sound with it. But that's really cool to hear. And I know that you said Tyler kind of wrote the song about his wife too.
Yep. Yeah, that's what he had said. So during this album, they were moving from, Tyler and his wife were moving from Los Angeles to New York or Brooklyn area. So that's kind of actually what Los Angeles, once we get into that, that's kind of his goodbye to the city. But yeah, I mean, with Tim was talking about just like the little things in life that, you know, you don't think about, but then over time they really add up and they do make your life. I mean, just in this song they talk about, you know, just crosswords and chamomile. So just playing these little games daily, just watching sailboats out at sea.
I don't know, it's kind of cool because if you think about it like that, like the whole nostalgia vibe of the Midnight, you know, I mean, those little things that when, you know, like talking like that, those little things you see at the time that you don't think are going to be memories, but then they turn out to be memories later on, you know. And once again, I think that obviously, you know, they're recapturing memories from an era, kind of, you know, creating new ones. But yeah, that's cool.
So they opened up their shows last year with this song, which I thought was pretty epic. But what was nice is at the beginning they actually kind of they expanded it out, and then they had a sample from Dead Poets Society where Robin Williams is really talking about that everybody are poets. So let's take a listen to that, and it might give us a little bit more insight to this song and the band, really.
We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race, and the human race is filled with passion. And medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. To quote from Whitman, "O me, O life of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, what good amid these, O me, O life? Answer, that you are here, that life exists in identity, that the powerful play goes on, that you may contribute a verse. That the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. What will your verse be?"
You know, first off, I love it whenever bands open like that, add a sample that really makes it feel like a super unique experience to the show, and this one fits perfectly with how poetic Tyler is, you know, with his lyrics and everything like that. So it's really cool to hear, first off, to hear Robin Williams, rest in peace, and then to think of a show starting off like that. I really can't wait to see them live. And side note, definitely makes me miss concerts, thinking about a show starting off like that. So
Totally. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. This is a great song. So yeah, I'm ready next week to get into Gloria. That was actually the song that they thought was going to be like the first single off the album or off the EP. So because it was more poppy, kind of poppy chorus, so they thought that was going to be the big song, but it wasn't. I'm not going to tell you which one it is until we get to that episode.
Yeah. Now I'm excited to get into Gloria. I think that it's super upbeat, really driving melodies, and it is funny that they were going to go with that for the single. It definitely feels like that. So it's kind of funny that another song ended up, kind of going that way. But no, I'm really excited to get into that, and I'm really excited that we took this deep dive on the Years too. I think it's a great song. It's a great intro.
And not only do we think the Years is good, we also asked you what you thought. This is from Twitter user FR Destier.
After the Midnight, this is François from France. Been a Midnight fan since, 2017, something like that. And I'm handling the French Facebook page with a few friends. Everyone there having fun, sharing things about the band. So yeah, it's a very blissful song. You can feel like it's very nostalgic, and still it remains hopeful for the future. I love those Vangelis sounding synths at the start. Tyler's voice is amazing, the lyrics are great, and you can feel it slowly building up to that explosion at the end, the drums, and then you've got like those final singing parts where you can hear a crowd singing with the band, and that's what happened. So we were lucky to have the Midnight twice in France, and the second time they opened with that song, and we couldn't see them for a year, and so that was the first taste of the Midnight live for a year, and it was just a magical moment where you could feel that everyone was on board, and I don't know, there's so much love in that band, in that community, and that song, it embodies that.
It's been a pleasure discussing it with you guys and really breaking it down. So thanks so much for listening to our first episode, and we really look forward to getting into Gloria next week, guys. Have a good one.